Rob, we're here for the HP Reinvent the Classroom podcast. Is your HyperX microphone on?
My HyperX microphone is definitely on and sounding sweet.
How cool are these? Look, I'm excited today. Obviously, we're going to have Canadian join us today, Brian Aspinall, all the way over from Ontario, Canada.
Yes.
You're familiar with his work?
Oh, very much so. Through Twitter, he's got about 1 trillion fans.
About a trillion last time I counted.
Yep, and just always on there and he's flexing his bod, but doing more than that, he's also showing some fantastic ideas around education and supporting writers around education.
Yeah, look, we're going to get into a few things in this episode. We're going to talk about how he did disrupt with Codebreaker book publishing, how he did disrupt the publishing model and actually had an avenue for real teachers to be able to get their voice out there. We're going to talk about his fitness and how much health and fitness and awareness has changed his lifestyle and what that means for his work. But then also we're going to talk a little bit about AI and coding. Like, he's the Codebreaker man. Like, that's where it all started from. So stay tuned because here we come for a fantastic episode. All right, I'm nice and excited. Our first episode of the Reinvent the Classroom podcast.
Fantastic.
I'm sitting here with my best friend. I've got my nice brand new HyperX microphone nice and close to me. And we have a fantastic guest all the way from Canada. Rob, do you know who's coming on today?
Brian Aspinall.
Yay, Brian. How you doing, brother?
Very well. How are you doing this morning?
Well, this morning for us, this evening for you, coming into summertime for us, coming into wintertime for you. I can see that chilly sort of looking weather in the corner of your window there. Tell me, I'm seeing you with a shirt on, and I'm not used to seeing you with a shirt on. I've been following you on your LinkedIn, following you on your Twitter for some time. Brother, shirt off normally, Thirst Trap EDU, is that the new brand?
That's right. Yeah, we're starting a calendar.
Now, Rob, you were talking to me a little bit before. You were going to ask Brian a bit of a question about shirt off and training.
Look, no, I wasn't going to be so rude, actually, to start with that. What I was going to say is I saw you tweeting 1 year, 5 days a week for a whole year in the gym. Has that made a difference? Not physically so much, but mentally. You do so much in education. You are across so many things. Has it made a difference for you?
It's made a phenomenal difference, believe it or not. Well, believe it, I guess. It's pretty obvious that you would expect something like that. I mean, a year ago, we were still on lockdown here in the province of Ontario, Canada. So just crushing that 12 months coming off of that pandemic just feels absolutely remarkable to be able to stick to something like that. Admittedly, I work and live in the social media space, and I teach online at the faculty of ed. So I spend a good 2 hours at that gym working on the treadmill.
Very cool. And do you feel like you can get more done in a day? Because that's probably the hardest thing for me, getting so much done in a day.
I do, and I'm very mindful to factor the gym into my work day. So I try to hit the gym at 9:00 a.m. every morning. I refuse to go outside of my working hours, so to speak. I think it's that important.
Now, I can see you're wearing your Codebreaker beanie there, and we've interacted for quite some time. But for the uninitiated, can you unpack what Codebreaker is and why it's been so transformative? Because this whole podcast is all about reinventing the classroom, thinking about things differently, helping schools change, making a difference with tech, but improving learning outcomes. And that's right at the core of exactly what Codebreaker is about.
1,000%, yeah. Admittedly, computer science is near to my heart. I was a self-taught coder in the 90s trying to fight that Y2K bug at the turn of the century. And so that led me to go to university and study computer science, and I ended up back at the Faculty of Education. And then I ended up in elementary school, and it was such a niche at the time. I started teaching 2005, 2006. And admittedly, we teach to our strengths, and, computer science was mine. And so I've been coding for almost 2 decades, in my elementary classroom. And admittedly, grabbed my surfboard there when the hour of code wave hit, and we're still kind of riding that bandwagon, to be honest. What happened was, after about a decade or so, I'm looking at around 2014, 2015, 2016, I started presenting at conferences in Ontario, and other school boards were like, how are you doing this in the elementary panel? So the consulting sort of happened accidentally, which is where Codebreaker was initially born. And we'll fast forward to 2020, March 13th, 2020. I was a scheduled keynote at a conference here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in the United States, just across the border. And that never happened. That was the day the NBA shut down, the world shut down, and they said, they're closing the borders. You're going to get your Canadian behind, back home. And March 14th, 2020 was the day I saw, dozens of consulting gigs go out the window. And we had already been publishing at that point, but that was a big pivot for us, was to start the publishing arm of Codebreaker Inc. So it's only 2.5 years old, which is we're really proud of, one of the fastest growing across the globe. And when that pandemic hit in 2020, I reached out to district leaders that I'd met, on the road over the previous 5 years doing keynote speaking, and said, we're all at home for the indefinite future. You have an amazing story that needs to be told. Let's leverage my social media and bring your story to life. So that's what 2021 looked like for us in the beginning of 2022.
So Brian, look, Codebreaker, one of the disruptive things that it's been able to do is give educators, people who are at the coalface, teachers who wouldn't normally have a pathway to share their voice, to share their story. It's opened up a new world of possibilities. I guess you've got a balance of return writers, people who are onto their second and third book, people who have an existing status and presence, and then also people who are in the classroom sharing their real story. I guess, is that the overarching goal, and what sort of impact have you felt that actually be able to bring to education?
Yeah, I find that amplifying small, I shouldn't use the word small. When I say the word small, I'm defining that as like presence on the internet. I mean, there are a lot of voices that need to be heard. There are people who have chosen not to sort of climb that ladder, if you will, and have decided to almost build their own, doing what they find is best for all kids using their own professional judgment. I personally like getting the first-time writers hooked on that first experience, because I've written 5 books and I'll never forget book 1. You will never forget the day book 1 comes to life, and be able to.
That's Codebreaker for those people who aren't familiar. Codebreaker. Check that book out.
Codebreaker. It's just 5 years old. November 2017 is when that came out. But being able to tell the story of somebody who is just crushing it in their classroom every day, may not get that recognition from their district, maybe he doesn't even want that recognition from the district, but is doing the work so well, the noise comes almost as a byproduct, if you will. Those are the stories that we want to amplify. The outliers.
Yeah. I guess that's. I was going to say that. No, I was going to say that's one of the challenges. I think in the career path of an educator, we tend to be the type of person who is other person centered. We've chosen a career in which the goal is to not put us first, but to put the needs of our students before our needs. So we are looking after other people constantly. So what you're doing, these are people who have great stories, but don't always have that natural inclination to go, hey, I need to be the one who gets heard. And you're giving people that opportunity.
Yeah. My only response is that a lot of the people on our roster I've had to push to write. They were reluctant, didn't want to. Thought I'm just a teacher. We've all said that. I'm just a teacher. Nobody wants to hear my story. And some of our more successful books have been written by those that we've pushed to step out of their own.
Yeah, we're pushing to step out of their own boundaries and their own comfort zones there. What I'm going to ask Brian in a second, and I know we've got that little bit of a glitch given where I don't know, maybe the line's frozen, literally frozen, because he's in cold northern hemisphere winter over there. But I was going to say, because Rob, I know you've got such a background in technology and in, I guess, the back end and the nuts and bolts of how tech learns, how tech works. And Brian, you've got that experience, obviously, with computer science and coding. And I guess, broadly speaking, Reinvent the Classroom, this is, a HP initiative where our DNA is technology, obviously. What do you feel are some of the strengths or the big rocks that we need to climb in tech moving forward? I know we were talking the other day about the emerging role of AI. But I guess both for Brian and for Rob, what do you think are some of those big, awesome things, plus a bit of the scary challenges as well? Rob, I might go to you first.
Well, actually, no, go to Brian first.
Brian, you're up.
Okay, so the challenges are, if education was a business, we'd all be broke because we take forever to adjust, to adapt to what's happening. Think that the AI stuff that's going out right now that we're seeing is going to be disruptive, particularly in the higher ed space, where we're still seeing some of that lecture style, the sit and get kind of experience, which is a wonderful thing because it's been my experience in middle school that we're always teaching for more school. So maybe if we finally make a change at the top, everything will kind of fall into place as we want it to. I think that the proper implementation of technology, I believe all kids can achieve if given a fair chance, and technology, when utilized properly, can be a vehicle used for unlocking human potential. So I think we're going to see a lot of equity things sort of flatten at the classroom level. However, pedagogically speaking, we're still stuck behind this numerical point checklist system of evaluation. And speaking as a computer scientist, when kids learn to code, it never works the first time through. And if kids' code doesn't work the first time through, it challenges us to redefine what it actually means to fail at school. Is that considered, failure, as in a 4 out of 10, as, I guess that word is traditionally known. So I think we have some pedagogical barriers to technological implementation, even things like safety, security, logistics, privacy, the big data stuff. But I am far on the edge of let's just embrace it. We're on the cusp of the Internet of Things. I want a kid's pencil sharpener to text me to say, buddy needs to sharpen his pencil so I can just signal him and he can get up and go. Imagine that.
Brian, I get enough texts. Hey, you you did mention AI, and I'm curious because a lot of us have been saying, teach kids to code. It's a form of literacy for quite a few years. Now we have an AI coming out, GPT-3 and ChatGPT, where we can say, hey, AI, please code me a website that does this thing. And I've tried it out, and it works pretty well, though there's always some bugs. But you can have a working app out of this thing in a matter of seconds or minutes. Do you think we were on the wrong track, perhaps, as to teaching kids how to code or computational thinking, or do you think that's still valid?
I think everything about this is thinking skills. We don't write in binary or machine language anymore because we've created those cake layers that makes it easier for the next generation to write code. If I'm going to let software write software, which I wrote a blog post 10 years ago that said code's going to write code, and yes, it's still important to teach, and I'm still going to stand by it today in the end of 2022, that it's still an incredibly important skill to teach, because the idea is being able to think like that AI. I want to dissect the AI and understand how the AI works, and I want kids to try and get the algorithm through that AI, like what is it parsing and looking at big data sets. There's a lot of thinking skills. So not only do I want them to use AI, but I want them to understand how it was built so that maybe they can make AI 2.0 in the next decade.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I think, I was going to say, like, you've talked about two things, and from my point of view, they're both pedagogical stances, and I guess that's perfect on a Reinvent the Classroom podcast, because that's really the heart of what Reinvent the Classroom is. As much as we layer in the tech and as much as we layer in the support, it's the pedagogical approaches that power change. So you've talked about the assessment and actually re-looking at what even that means and how we do that and the activities that we set up with kids and how we even judge kids. But not only the assessment, but the task structure itself. So when you say that layering the cake, I really like that metaphor, because how often I'm going to say, be a very Australian and say, like a pavlova. If I'm going to make a cake, sometimes I can go to Coles or Woolies and I can already buy that pavlova base, and I don't need to start from scratch. I can get there, and then I put on the whipped cream, I put on the kiwi fruit, I put on the things, and I get the pavlova. I've been able to create something that I previously wouldn't have been able to create. I look at this AI stuff and so, yeah, like I may not have been able to have those basic fundamentals, but now I can use this stuff. I can actually set that first layer of the cake, and then pedagogically I can shift and go, well, what can I actually do to go beyond what was previously possible? And I think that's the real flick that's going to have to happen. It's so hard to bake that cake. It's so hard to get students to write those stories, to craft that narrative, to code that tool. But now we've got the ability to do those fundamentals quickly and easy. What we need to do now is, okay, we've got that preset cake. How do we push children? How do we change pedagogically the task so we push children to go into the stratosphere? I reckon that's the big challenge.
I was just going to give a space analogy, and you said stratosphere. I think like at the root of human beings, we're explorers by default. We're still navigating and exploring this planet, like bottoms of our oceans. Hate them or not, Elon's ready to explore the next. And I think with the proper pedagogical implementation of technology as a species, if we could bind together, we are ready to go and explore the next. We're outgrowing this planet exponentially quick. And I think some of those skills, using the AI bot to have kids assess and try and create solutions to real world problems, well, that'll never go away.
I think Rob, I reckon Brian just gave us this episode's name, To the Next. To the Next. That's the name of this episode. Woo! Mic drop on that one. But I want to re-emphasize what you've just said there with this AI tools. Like we can dissect stuff. Like I know, Rob, you had a post out recently. You took it was an essay question, something about like Japanese culture and the impact of American not colonization, but American
something like that. The topic
post-World
wasn't so
War
much
II.
important.
The topic, but it was a complex question.
Yeah.
You used the GTP3, wrote a 1,500 word essay in about 45 seconds from the time that you got the essay question to the product of a 1,500 word essay. So the default setting of, hey kids, write an essay on X, you know what? That time has changed. The future is now. There's no more denying that technology is going to change the way we talk or change the way we teach, because if you're just going to give an essay to a kid, that kid's going to write that essay in 45 seconds. So what we have to do...
Or they're not.
The AI is, and because it's all copyright free and original, you can put it through. It won't pick up on any plagiarism scanners and all that sort of stuff. So what we have to do is exactly what you just said, Brian, like to the next. How do we then get the students to analyze, okay, they've written this essay, here is a basic, good C-level, B-level essay. What is this AI missing? What is the AI good at writing, but what is missing to take this to the next? What takes this out of the stratosphere? What gets this? What puts booster rockets on this essay and just takes that to the next level? That's the challenge.
And the biggest barrier to that is you can't grade something that's never been done before.
Wow. Well, that's possible. That's insane. That's
you can't grade something that's never been done before. What does that mean? Can you tease that out for me?
What rubric is going to suggest, in any kind of point scale, that you're going to assign a numerical value to a creative idea that's just been invented? How do you can't put that on? Is that a 9 out of 10? It's never been done before. It's a 10 out of 10.
Which loops us back to the whole, let's not only think pedagogically different about the tasks that we're setting our students, but even questioning what is an assessment task. How do we assess? What are we trying to value? Because you measure what you value, right? And we're trapped in, do we value a grade, a score, a report card, or do we value free thinking, creativity, entrepreneurialism? What is it as a society that we want our students to be able to have? What skill set do we want them when they graduate? What is it that we want to enable them to have so that they can be successful in society?
Brian, what would you say to a teacher that said, oh, that's all good and well, but practically, how do we do that when I've got 30 students in front of me, maybe more? and I can't necessarily sit with them and have Socratic dialogue for an hour each?
I get that question 17 times a day, obviously, because I live so far in the fringe. It's twofold. For me, the larger I went in project-based learning with technological integration, we shifted not only from student engagement to student empowerment, but absenteeism behaviors went right out the window because everybody wanted to be a good school and they were taking ownership over what they were creating. And that was another shift. You have to look at content consumption versus content creation and have that debate as to whether it's so cut and dry and there's no overlap. The other piece of that puzzle, I think, is the further I went with this stuff, the more planning time I had. So it was actually easier to conference with all 35 of my students because of the classroom management system in place, because they're so engaged. They're all, for the most part, let's be realistic, for the most part, they're all sort of on task, allowing me to have conversations with one or two or three at any given time. I think that pushback is a classroom management question, not a technological integration question.
Are there certain frameworks that you'd rely on to help you to create that sort of classroom style?
We have a lot of ministry documents here in the province of Ontario that I follow. I've obviously followed the ISTE standards. I followed the CSTA standards. We have our own policies here at the faculty of Ed where I instruct a few different courses. But to be honest, it's sort of been this common sense idea of just going gut instinct of this is what we think is right, and no one's ever blazed this trail before. So all that we can do is our very best and continue to truck forward.
You used a phrase there, and let me just make sure the good old HyperX is nice and close to you. I think that's why you're a little bit too far away from your beautiful HyperX before, Rob. But you mentioned a phrase that I know is not super common in awareness in Australia. So you had the ISTE standards, even the term ISTE. So whilst in North America and across Europe, ISTE incredibly well renowned. Do you want to unpack, and I've been fortunate enough to go to a few ISTEs and present at a few ISTEs, and I'm going to see you in America in the very, very near future when we present at the same conference in I don't know, a couple of weeks away. But can you tell the listeners, especially our Australian audience here, what ISTE is, the scope of ISTE, and the ISTE standards, what are they trying to achieve? Because the ISTE standards are things that Australian educators would benefit from having a little bit more awareness of.
Is it just fair to say ISTE is North America's bet? Would that summarize?
Not quite, because bet's a little bit more UK. ISTE is it's the largest education conference in the world, or their annual conference. ISTE is the International Society for Technology and Education, and like all international societies, a little bit like the baseball World Series. It's the World Series in which one country plays, America. I think, or Canada might have a team in the World Series. So the World Series of baseball is a two-country World Series. ISTE, the International Society, is a North American society, but it is epic. It's huge. Like, it will have tens of thousands of people come along to it. But the actual organization itself is much more than just a standalone conference. And one of the real, I guess, gems of ISTE is this ISTE standards, this framework that they have out there that people can follow and I guess even work towards their own development. Do you want to unpack how you've come across the ISTE standards and how you find how they operate?
Yeah, we use the ISTE standards in our courses at the Faculty of Education. So there's ISTE standards for students that we use, and there's ISTE standards for teachers. For student, for example, it would be something like, I am able to create, and it would just be vague like that, create green screen, create code, you fill in. ISTE standards for teachers are set to adopt that lifelong learning mindset. They're full of things that keep teachers moving. We have to write what's called an annual learning plan here in Ontario, Canada, as educators. And I really love pulling from those because the growth and the next steps are always in there. They're at the forefront of what's happening in the corporate technological world every year. Like Brett, you had said, tens of thousands of people attending this conference. It is kilometers long. I've been a few times, and you could get lost.
Not miles, kilometers.
Oh, I did notice that.
Miles,
Yeah.
maybe.
Metric system in Canada. Hey, I've got two fast questions for you. One loaded question: favorite prehistoric animal that has been used in one of the Code Breaker books as a metaphor.
Hands down, mammoth.
Very good, very good. And for those people who are listening and don't understand the pun there, my book, which happens to be sitting on the table, A Mammoth Lesson, and a little stuffed mammoth over there, was actually published through the Code Breaker network. But what I want to ask you now is left of field question, and this is probably going to be our final question. What is your favorite dinosaur, and what does that tell me a bit about you? What is your favorite dinosaur, and how does that let me have a little insight into the real Brian?
That is a loaded question. A second loaded question, because my wife's in the room and she's a giant dinosaur fan, so I better get this right.
Well, Canada's got the Badlands. You get to dig up dinosaurs all the time, right?
I'm going with the T-Rex, hands down the T-Rex, and you can create your own metaphor.
There you go. Rob had to talk me out of getting a T-Rex tattoo just about 2 weeks ago.
It was the
I
worst
heard
pun.
something about that near your birthday.
Brian, it wasn't just a T-Rex, it was holding a cup of tea. It was possibly the worst pun I've ever seen on a tattoo. It was his birthday, he was excited. I had to just walk him right out of there.
Talked me down off the edge. What is a T-Rex? What does your T-Rex tell me about Brian, the real Brian? What's the insight into your personality?
Every day's legs day.
Every day is legs day.
I don't know. I just said T-Rex.
Well, do you know what? I tell you something. T-Rex is pretty bloody cool, and you are pretty cool, sir. So I'm glad to be able to call you my friend. I am glad to be able to have like a partnership through the book with you. And how awesome is this in my first episode of the Reinvent the Classroom podcast to be able to sit down and have such a awesome T-Rex style educator join us. Thank you so much, my brother.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, thanks, man. See you later. All right, Rob. Brian Aspinall, what did you think?
What a champion. Full of energy, Canadian energy, and I really love it. I love how he's helping put a lot of other people on the radar, and teachers that wouldn't otherwise have had a go at writing, they're going to have a go at writing and get their message out there, and they're good messages.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about having quality experiences, quality resources, like the quality HyperX mics that we're utilizing today. I feel like I've grown up. I've got a real podcast mic now.
I know, they're beautiful.
They're pretty awesome. But look, I think. Just excited excited or disappointed that Brian kept his shirt on.
Yeah, well, we got to keep it PG.
PG for the fans.
Yeah.
But look, he made a lot of really valid points. Like we know this whole concept of reinventing the classroom. We know that we're looking to do things a little bit different, and having coding, having skills, and disrupting the norm, but doing that purposefully with a desired impact. That's what education needs.
Absolutely.
Look, so, I mean, this was a great episode. If you want to find out more about Reinvent the Classroom, where do people go, Rob? Do you know?
I think it is hp.com.au/RTC.
hp.com.au/RTC for all of your Reinvent the Classroom needs. Jump on the next episode. And of course, if you would like to find out more about the RTC program and help your school improve impact and learning with your digital transformation, don't forget to reach out to the HP Education Ambassador.